Hello, I am Father Simon Robinson, a parish priest in the Diocese of Bath and Wells. This video is the second in a series which is focusing on some everyday questions of life, faith and the world. 40 questions, in fact, which have been turned into a pack of cards that the diocese gave us during Lent to help us focus discussions within our parishes and within our wider communities. The question that we are considering today is the question, if you could ask God one question, what would it be? If you could ask God one question, what would it be? I've asked 5 ordinands, 5 theological students, to answer this question today and to provide us with their thoughts about what their one question to God would be. 4 of them are well known to us here in Minehead, having done placements with us through the Diocese of Europe, and that is Richard and Sam, Henry and Christiane. And the 5th student, Lloyd, is an aspirant member of the same religious community that I'm part of, the Sodality of Mary. I hope you find what they say interesting and possibly even challenging, and that you too may feel inspired to reflect on what your one question of Almighty God might just be.
Hello, dear friends in Minehead. What an incredible joy to be speaking to you on camera and to have an opportunity to share a few moments with you. It's been more than 2 years since I was last with you, and I really want to say to you how much I remember with real affection the incredible time I had with you, your love and welcome, and also the inspiration you provided to me. Yeah. Simon asked me to answer a question about God, and the question is this. If I had one question to ask God, what would it be? I have to tell you that that's been a really difficult question to try and answer, not least because I pray to God all the time and feel that my prayers are answered in one way or another, either through people I meet or experiences I have, and the sense I have of God being there with me through difficult times and good times and all the time. However, I have thought about this, and I thought that if I came somehow face to face with God and could get over the overwhelming fear and joy that such an experience would bring, I would ask him this: God, what can I do? What is the one thing I can do to help make the kingdom more present, more manifest, your kingdom more manifest in the world? And how can I bring more people to know the riches of that kingdom? And thinking about it, I rather fear that his answer may be not quite what I bargained for. It might be a bit like the rich young man in Matthew's Gospel who asks Jesus what he needs to do to gain eternal life. And although he does rather well, I think rather better than me, on the list of the commandments that he's kept, Jesus turns to him and then says, "That's not enough. Now you need to sell everything you have, drop everything, give it to the poor, and follow me." And the rich young man turns away downhearted because he's very rich and has many possessions and knows he's not capable of living up to that command. But I also hope and believe that once we'd got over that, God would turn to me and smile and say, "Richard, don't worry. What have you got there in your bag?" And I'd turn to him and say, "Well, Lord, I've got a couple of mouldy loaves of bread and a few rotting fishes." And he'd say, "That's fine. Go back to earth and Hand out those fishes and those loaves and don't worry, because they will feed with great abundance, despite the fact that they look so rotten and mouldy. And that will be enough, dear friend, dear beloved Richard. I really hope that would be true. Now, of course, if he doesn't turn around and say that, I would simply ask for forgiveness and depend on his mercy and love. So that's the question I'd ask God. And it's the question I ask God every day. What can I do to serve your kingdom and to make your kingdom known to as many as possible? On this Easter tide, today I'm speaking to you on St. Mark's Day. Let us be evangelists. Let us do what we can to make the kingdom known. I know that's what you do in Minehead, and it's what I really, really loved about you and what I gained from you when I was with you. So be assured that my heart and my prayers are with you, and I look forward to the next time we can meet and be together and share the joy of our risen Lord. God bless. Goodbye.
If I could have got one question, what would it be? I guess my question would be to God, God, how can I find you in the midst of my anxiety and in times of depression? Because when I experience depression or anxiety in my life, there are in these dark times, I don't experience God that much. I know He's with me, but I cannot sense Him by my side. So my question would be, in what specific ways could I find you in these dark moments?
Welcome, dear friends, to the College of the Resurrection. It's a great privilege to be with you in this virtual way in these very troubling times. If I could ask God just one question, I think I would want to know how each of us can encounter Christ so intimately that we can claim, as St. Paul did, to have the mind of Christ. Let me try to shape that rather abstract question with a little more colourful detail. Here in Mirfield, the college has now been closed for almost 4 weeks, and besides making the most of our beautiful grounds, some of which you can see and hear in the background, I've been enjoying the opportunity to spend more time reading and engaging with the Bible. During Holy Week, I focused on the New Testament's 4 very different accounts of the last hours that Jesus spent with his disciples. Reading these texts, I was reminded of the particularly puzzling case of the so-called naked fugitive in Mark's account of the Passion. When Judas arrives at the Garden of Gethsemane, leading a crowd with swords and clubs in order to arrest Jesus, all of the disciples deserted him and fled. It is at this point that Mark adds a very curious detail, a detail that is found in none of the other Gospels. A certain young man was following Jesus, Mark tells us, wearing nothing but a linen cloth. They caught hold of him, but he left the linen cloth and ran off naked. What dread fear must have overcome this man to flee from the garden without his clothes? Who was this young man, and why doesn't Mark tell us his name? Was Mark trying perhaps to protect his anonymity? Where did the young man run to? And how on earth did he get over the tremendous sense of shame that he must have felt, not only because he had deserted Jesus, but because his naked body had been exposed to a whole number of people? Some scholars have suggested that the naked fugitive makes a second, equally prominent appearance in the Gospel of Mark. There is some textual evidence to suggest that he is in fact the same person as the young man dressed in a white robe, whom the 3 women find sitting in the empty tomb after Jesus has risen. The young man in the white robe, our one-time naked fugitive, turns out to know quite a lot about Jesus' whereabouts, telling the women that the one they are looking for has risen from the dead and will meet them in Galilee. Where did the young man get this information, and how on earth did he come to know the mind of Christ? Was he there to witness the resurrection and able to speak in person to the risen Jesus? If the naked fugitive who deserted Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane was privileged to witness the resurrection and to know the plans of the risen Christ, I wonder how it is that we too might come to behold the risen Lord in our lives. Do we likewise have to experience the shame of deserting Jesus, of fleeing naked from his side? Or is there perhaps another way? This then is what I would wish to ask God. How can each one of us encounter the risen Jesus face to face, here and now, so that we, like St. Paul and the naked fugitive, may come to know the mind of Christ?
Hello. If I could ask God one question, what would it be? Well, in a sense, I think, of course, we or I can ask God as many questions as I wish all of the time, and God will respond. The problem with that is that it takes a lot of time and effort to discern God's response. I need to consult the scriptures. I need to engage in theological discussion and reflection. And I need to observe everything that's happening around me. I need to be very attentive to the world around me in order to discern God's response in all of this. And in a sense, I think I don't ask God enough questions. I'm sometimes not patient or not courageous enough, maybe, to pose my questions to God. So now, if you ask me, what is the one question that you're most impatient about, where you long most eagerly for a more immediate answer? I think that question would be something about redemption. It would be something on the lines of, God, can you guarantee that there won't be a second fall from grace or from heaven, so to say? And that question comes from a worry of mine that I sometimes have when I look at the world and look at all the strife and the conflict and the ways people don't get on with each other. And then I think about the heavenly banquet, paradise, eternal peace in heaven. And I just think, well, what does need to happen for us to be entirely redeemed? Or to put it differently, like, how can these human beings, us, even if we are redeemed, how can God guarantee we don't mess it up again? That would be my question. And yeah, I think for the time being, I just need to, as I said, read the scriptures and engage in theological discussion with others to discern God's response to that question.
So I found that's an interesting question to think about because I grew up in a non-religious family, had a lot of these questions for God, less so now actually. So it's sort of reminding me of a more skeptical and questioning time in my life. Prompted now to think about what I would ask God at this point in my faith journey. I think it would still be that question that I always had growing up, which is a question about suffering. I didn't know if I could even phrase it as a question or fit it into a sentence. I think that's one of those issues that's only expressed in sighs too deep for words, but perhaps I would plagiarize the last question that Jesus asked to God. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? I think that captures a lot of the groaning for an answer in the midst of deep darkness that we often experience. I think it captures the question of why is there not just suffering, but God forsakenness? Why, God, is there darkness that your light doesn't seem to penetrate, that doesn't seem to have any of the fragrance of your presence? I think that's a question that I would like to hear an answer to if I was in the presence of God. It's often said in regard to this that we're sort of on one side of a tapestry that's a bit messy, and when we see the other side, then we'll see how it all ties together. And quite honestly, I'd like to see the other side. I'd like to see from God's perspective, see if it all does tie together, if it does make sense, or if it really is meaningless, a lot of the suffering that we experience. I suspect that the answer, the other side of the tapestry, may be as heartbreaking or more so than this side, seeing how involved, how interwoven the life of God is with the suffering of the world. So perhaps in a way we're guarded from that by not knowing, but it's still a question that I've always had, and that I think many people have always had about life, the question of suffering.
I hope you found the reflections and the thoughts of our friends Richard and Sam and Henry, Christiane and Lloyd interesting, challenging, possibly nourishing even, and that you may well feel inspired to think about what your one question to Almighty God might just be.